Microcolor 2 ink control system provides accurate, repeatable ink control and can make your press room more productive. With Microcolor 2, you can maintain precise control even on lighter coverage jobs and control ink blade settings within approximately 1/1000th of an inch. The Microcolor 2 system can reduce make-ready from 30 to 50% and run waste by up to 10%. With automated ink control, you set the fountains from a console, so you spend less time walking back and forth between the delivery end of the press and the ink fountains. Part 1 of this training video includes an introduction to the Microcolor 2 system and basic operation. Now, this section of the video covers 5 main concepts: understanding the equipment, controlling the ink fountain, zeroing the servos, starting and running a form, and recalling or reusing a form. The main parts of the Microcolor system are the system computer and monitor, the console, the SPUs, and the servos. The Microcolor 2 system can be interfaced to a variety of plate scanners. The system computer uses a system disk and user disks. The system disk remains in the left-hand disk drive. The system computer uses this disk to boot when it is turned on. The user disks are high-density floppy disks. Each user disk can store up to 63 forms. Do not write-protect the user disks. The system computer communicates with the console and the SPU. The number of SPUs required is based on the size and width of the press. The power switch light shows that the SPU is on. The flashing lights show when the SPU is communicating with the system computer or banks of servos on the ink fountains. Servo motors that drive adjustable ink keys replace manual ink keys on the press. Depending on the press design, the fountain and blades may be replaced as well. When the fountain is set, the servos adjust the keys from the center of the ink fountain and work their way to the outside edges of the blade. The console display shows ready or a form number. It also shows the colors K, C, M, Y, and special colors 1 through 8. The plus sign appears when the servo positions match the console settings. Messages prompt for more information or show what the system is doing. The monitor mirrors the console display. The ink profile shows servo positions for the fountain. The range shows the ink key moves since the color OK button was pushed. The Microcolor 2 console is designed proportionately so that you can lay down a plate or press sheet on the inspection table and line it up with the ink zones that control it. The console is easy to use. You can adjust each ink zone individually, adjust all ink zones up or down simultaneously, or make percentage changes. Use the unit buttons to select the fountain you want to control. The light shows which fountain you have selected. The zone buttons change the settings for individual zones. A numeric display above the zone button shows the ink setting from 0 for minimum ink to 99 for maximum ink. The lights below the numbers show the zone setting in increments of 10. Push a zone button to change the ink setting by 1. Hold down the button to keep changing the setting by 1s. Hold down the button even longer to change the setting by 10s. The Microcolor 2 system works with light or heavy coverage. When you adjust zone settings for light coverage jobs, the fountains change gradually for precise ink control at lower ink settings. Adjusting zone settings for heavy coverage above 50 results in larger changes, so changing from 60 to 70 will have a much bigger impact on the press than changing from 20 to 30. For presses with segmented fountain blades, set adjacent zones within a 50% range. If continuous fountain blades are used, keep adjacent zones within a 30% range. You can adjust all the zones for the inker at the same time with the All Zones or % button. The All Zones button increases or decreases the settings for all the zones for the inker. Use the % button to change all the zones by a percentage of the current setting. The ink coverage changes overall, but low values like borders do not change much. The results are similar to a change in sweep, but more precise. When you finish adjusting the zones, you can use the Run button. to send the settings for the selected fountain on the press. When the run light is off, push Run to set that fountain. When the run light is on, after a 5-second delay, changes are sent directly to the press. A flashing inker button light means the servos for that fountain are setting. The Set Press button sets all fountains on the press. It is like selecting each inker and pushing the Run button. The Lock button is a toggle that locks the console settings. When the lock is on, the red light comes on. The other console buttons will not respond until the lock is off. It is a good idea to push the Lock button when leaving the console unattended. This will prevent accidental changes to zone settings. To turn off the lock, push the button a second time. The 0 button sets the servos to 0 for one fountain, all fountains, or for optional sweep and water. Push the 0 button. Then choose the desired option from the 0 menu and follow the prompts on the blue display. After the 0, the blue display will show a message to tell you that the 0 is complete. If zone settings are on the console, they will be restored. To send the console settings to the press, push the Run or Set Press button. When the settings on the press match the console settings, the plus sign will appear. The 0 button is convenient for washing up. More importantly, it recalibrates the servo motors. To ensure accurate fountain settings, zero all the fountains at least once a day. With the Auto Zero option, a GMI sheet counter connects to the Microcolor 2 system computer. When the press stops, the servos automatically go to 0. When the press starts up again, the ink settings are restored. When you start a new form, push the New Form button and enter the form number. Place the plate for the first fountain on the inspection table, centered above the lit zone display numbers. If the Microcolor 2 system does not include sweep control, use consistent press sweep settings. If sweep and water control are installed, set them from 0 to 99. Sweep settings will be saved with the form, even if the sweep controls are not installed. These settings will return if the form is recalled. Adjust the zones for each inker, then push Run or Set Press to send the settings to the press. When the ink profile looks good, push the Save button to store the form on the user disk. When the color is approved, push the Color OK button, then lock the console. Anytime a job number change is required, unlock the console, then push the End Form button to clear the zone settings and remove the form number from the blue display. The Recall Form button lets you recall the form without changing the color order and the form number. Reuse Form lets you create a new form using the settings from a saved form. To view a list of the forms on a user disk, push the System button, select the disk option, then choose the forms list. This concludes Part 1 of the Microcolor 2 training video. Part 1 covered these concepts: understanding the equipment, controlling the ink fountain, zeroing the servos, starting and running a form, and recalling or reusing a form. Part 2 of this training video explains advanced operation of the Microcolor 2 system. This section of the video explains how to use these features: locking individual zones, copying blocks of zones, copying from one fountain to another, swapping settings between two units, presetting a form, working with versions, and changing the color order. We will begin with locking individual zones. You can use the System button to lock the settings for individual console zones. The zones will remain locked until they are unlocked or the form is ended. Push System and select the Utility menu. Then choose Zone Lock. To lock a zone, push the Up button for that zone. Pushing the Down button unlocks the zone. Dashed lines show which zones are locked. Push Ent to save the lock zones. If the zone lock option does not appear, contact GMI customer service to see if the system computer is the latest version. The Block Copy Zones option copies the settings from a group of adjacent zones to one or more groups of zones on the console. Block Copy will copy the settings for all fountains on the press simultaneously. First, adjust a group of ink zones on the console to their desired settings for each fountain on the press. Push the Copy button, which looks like a camera, and select Item 2 block from the Copy menu. Push a zone button to select the first and last zone in the group that you want to copy. Then choose the leftmost zone of one or more target blocks. The Microcolor 2 will copy the profile from those zones to the target block for all fountains on the press. Individual zones that have been locked will not change. You can adjust the zones, then use Repeat Block Copy to repeat the last copy with the new settings. Use the Copy button to copy the zone settings and optional sweep and water settings from one fountain to another. The color symbol will not be copied. The Copy button can save setup time for a process color form. Often, the process colors will have very similar ink profiles, but with more or less ink overall. To speed Make Ready, set one fountain from the plate and copy the settings to the other fountain. Then make overall adjustments for color strength. The Swap Units button exchanges the zone settings, color symbols, and optional sweep and water settings for two inkers. The order in which you select the inkers does not matter. Use the Preset button to enter settings for the next form while a form is running. While Preset is active, you cannot send settings to the fountains. You can return to the form running on press at any time by pushing Preset again. Push the Preset button, then push New Form and enter the color sequence and the form number. Set the ink zones for each inker for the form. Then push the End Form button and save the form. The zone displays will go to 0. Push Preset again to return to the current form. When the current form is complete, push End Form. To start the preset form, use the Recall form and Set Press buttons. For proofing or other critical color work, use the Version button to try press settings. Up to 7 versions may be created. If you need to store more versions for the same job, one of the old versions must be replaced. Push Version and choose the Make option to automatically store the settings that are currently on the press in computer memory. Adjust the zones, then push Version. Choose Make again to create a second version. When the customer decides on the best version, push Version and get the correct one from the list on the monitor screen. Each version shows the time it was created. The version settings will replace the settings that were on the console. The settings for first inker will be displayed. Push Yes to confirm. Now push Run or Set Press to send the settings to the press. Make any minor adjustments for water and temperature changes. To save the version settings, push the Version button and choose Save. Select the version to be saved. Then enter a form number. Once a version has been saved, that version will be removed from the version memory. Unsaved versions will remain until the form is ended. Use the Color Order button to assign a special color order to a particular form. The standard color order will remain unchanged. Push the Color Order button and choose Job Color. Push No to avoid using the standard color order. Then assign the fountain for the first color ink. Next, assign the fountain for the second color ink. To skip a color, push Ent. Continue until each fountain on the job has a color assigned to it. If the job does not require all fountains on the press, push No after all required fountains have been assigned a color, and the setup will stop. We reviewed advanced operations: locking individual zones, copying blocks of zones, copying from one fountain to another, swapping settings between two units, presetting a form, working with versions, and changing the color order. This concludes Part 2. If you have the optional sweep or water control installed, please watch the Part 3. If not, go to Part 4, Maintenance and Service. Part 3 explains the optional sweep and water control, which includes these features: sweep control and sweep lock, the sweep setting and sweep all buttons, the water setting and water all buttons, and the water surge button. The Microcolor 2 system may be connected to sweeps driven by motors or by servos. Water controls are driven by servos. The sweeps and waters are connected in series. The first one must be connected for the SPU to communicate with the second one, and so on. Some presses have sweeps that cannot be turned unless the press is running. This may cause a position error for the sweep motor if you try to set the sweeps while the press is stopped. If your system includes the sweep lock option, a GMI sheet counter connects to the Microcolor 2 computer. When the press stops, the sweeps are locked, so they will not move. When the press starts up again, the sweeps are unlocked. With the sweep control option, two buttons on the console control the sweeps: the sweep setting button and the sweep all button. The sweep setting button increases or decreases the sweep or speed of the ink fountain roller from 0 to 99%. Adjustments can be made for one fountain or all fountains. The sweep settings are stored with the zone settings whenever you save a form. These sweep settings return if you recall the form. Pushing End Form or New Form will not change the sweep settings. When adjusting sweeps, remember to push the Run button to send settings to the press. The Sweep All button lets you control the sweep for all fountains of the press. To set the sweeps for the all fountains, push the Sweep All button, then push Set Press. The sweep for the first inker is set at 40, and the sweep for the second inker is set at 20. When the Sweep All button is pushed, its light comes on. Increasing the sweep setting affects the sweep for each fountain proportionately. In this case, the sweep increased 25% for both fountains. The first fountain changed from 40 to 50, while the second fountain changed from 20 to 25. When all the sweeps for the press are set at 0, they can be increased simultaneously. Push the Sweep All button, then use the Sweep Setting button to set the sweeps. This sweep setting will apply to all fountains on the press. The water setting button increases or decreases the speed of the dampener roller from 0 to 99%. Waters can be adjusted for one fountain or for all fountains of the press. Pushing End Form or New Form will not change these settings. They are not cleared to 0 like the zone settings. The Water All button is similar to the Sweep All button. Water control may include the water surge option. The water surge increases the dampener roller speed to flood the roller for a programmed length of time. Pushing the water surge button a second time adds a shorter incremental surge. Contact GMI customer service if you want to change the length of the surge time. If you do not have the sweep or water control connected to your press, you may still manually enter the settings for each fountain and save them with the form. Then, when the form is recalled, you can adjust your press controls back to those settings. Stay tuned for maintenance and troubleshooting tips. Part 3 covered the optional sweep and water control, including these features: sweep control and sweep lock, the sweep setting and sweep all buttons, the water setting and water all buttons, and the water surge button. Next, Part 4 describes maintenance and service for the Microcolor 2 system. Part 4 describes Microcolor 2 maintenance and service, including the following topics: maintenance, no plus sign, SPU and servo errors, testing the servos, replacing a servo, and sweep and water errors. Although the Microcolor 2 system reduces blade wear by preventing severe over-tightening of ink keys, some wear will occur. The rate of wear can be reduced by following these suggestions. Do not set the fountains any tighter than necessary in light coverage areas. Use a low setting of ink sweep or fountain roller speed. Periodic fountain calibration should be part of your preventative maintenance program. Calibration is easily accomplished by trained customer personnel. The Microcolor 2 service manual explains how to calibrate the fountain. The plus sign appears when the servo's sweeps and waters position match the console setting. If the plus sign does not appear after the settings are sent to the press, there may be a minor positioning error. Now, this can occur if the servos have not been zeroed regularly. Push Run again to send the settings to the press. Now, if the problem continues, make sure the run light is on and zero the servos. If your system includes optional sweep and water control, zero them as well. If the current zone settings are lost for any reason, the settings from the press can be restored to the console. Push the system button and choose the utility menu, then select Restore to return the press settings to the console. If there is a communication problem with the SPU, the blue display will show the SPU COM error message. If this occurs, push Ent to clear the message. If the run light is off, push Run to retry. If the problem continues, check for the following conditions. Check the green power light on the SPU. If it is off, make sure the circuit powering the SPU and the power switch are both on. See if the gray RS422 cable between the system computer and the SPU is damaged or disconnected. If the SPU power light is on and the cables are connected, there may have been a temporary power or line noise problem. Turn off the SPU and the system computer. Wait 30 seconds, then turn them back on. For more help about resolving the problem, see the Microcolor 2 service manual or call GMI customer service. If there is a servo problem, the blue display will show the servo error message. If this occurs, the zone settings may not be properly sent to the ink fountain. Push Ent, then push Run to send the settings to the press. If the problem reoccurs, zero the fountain. If it continues, check the cable connections from the SPU to the problem inker. If this fails to correct the problem, run the servo test. A faulty servo may move incorrectly or cause the entire bank of servos to be erratic or not respond at all. The servo test can help locate faulty servos. The test identifies each fountain on the press as a unit. During the test, servos are numbered from the connector end of the wiring harness. Now, this may not match the way the zones or the servo cover are numbered. To improve the accuracy of the test, zero the fountain before running the servo test. Push System and select the servo test. To identify the faulty servo, the system may test fewer and fewer servos at a time. If the problem is located, the blue display indicates which one should be replaced. If the faulty servo cannot be isolated, there may be a short circuit or a communication error in the servo or the cable. The Microcolor 2 system will go to the auto retry test. During this continuous test, the system computer will automatically keep testing the servos. The test can be stopped at any time by pushing the del button. Leave the test running and disconnect the servos one by one. Start with the servo farthest away from the servo harness connector. When the problem servo's connector is removed, the first servo on the unit will start to run. If connectors are removed from all but the first servo, and it still does not run, the first servo is probably the problem. Replace the faulty servo and plug in all the connectors that had to be removed. Push Ent to complete the test. If the unit failed message still appears, replace the previous servo on the bank. Before replacing a servo, zero the unit and make sure that the problem is not a stuck key. Be sure to use the correct 1/4-inch screw as provided. Using longer screws will damage the servo. A wide fountain may contain 2 banks of servos. Be sure to replace the servo in the correct bank. Set all ink zones on the unit to 0. Open the servo cover, or if it does not have hinges, remove the screws or clips holding the servo cover, and then remove the servo's mounting screws. Carefully pull the connector off the servo without damaging the wires. Remove the set screws, then remove the servo. Make sure the key is turned so that the pins on the key top are oriented vertically and that the key is at the 0 position, not a half turn out. At this point, when the fountain closed, the key should become slightly hard to turn. The new servo should be set at 0, with the 2 slots corresponding to the ears of the key aligned vertically. Plug the connector into the servo and attach it with the same 2 screws. Servos that are soaked or misted with fountain solution will not work until they dry out. Always replace the servo covers as soon as possible, otherwise the warranty will be void. Return faulty servos to Graphic Microsystems Incorporated for replacement under warranty or exchange credit. The 24-hour customer hotline is listed on the inside front cover of each manual. If there is a problem with the sweep control, the sweep settings may not be properly sent to the fountain. The blue display will show the sweep error message. This message also indicates the SPU number. A temporary electrical noise problem can cause this error. Push the Run button with the press running, and Microcolor 2 will retry the move. If the problem recurs, check the cable connections from the SPU to the sweep junction box and the sweep actuators. If the message returns, test the sweeps to locate the problem or use the sweep troubleshooting kit available from customer service. Tests are also available for optional sweep or water control. If your system includes these controls, these tests are very similar to the servo test and are explained in the Microcolor 2 User's Manual. Part 4 explained Microcolor 2 maintenance and service, including the following topics: maintenance, no plus sign, SPU and servo errors, testing the servos, replacing a servo, and sweep and water errors.
This concludes the Microcolor 2 training video. We hope this has been helpful in getting you familiar with your system. If you need any additional information on operation or maintenance of your system, please call Graphic Microsystems Customer Support at 408-745-1144.